Hey, Sean, it's it's been a few weeks, and what a few weeks it's been, and I've been reflecting on so much and trying to find ways to get involved and to make a difference. And it hasn't felt right to publish content because there's voices that are more important than mine right now. And and it was a time for me to listen and learn some new things and some things I maybe hadn't taken the time to properly absorb before. And then more than that, once absorbed, how to take responsible action, meaningful action, to move forward in a way that I can be proud of and that I can look back on, and that my son can look back and say, my dad did the right thing. And that's important. And as I look at what's going on with the Black Lives Matter movement right now, and police brutality, and the just how divided we've become as a country in so many ways, and how the media, I hate saying the media, but how a lot of outlets have amplified the violence and ignored the message, and how that summary has resonated with some people. I find it scary and annoying, and I was struggling with what to say, what to think, how to feel, what to do for the past 2 weeks. And then, like, 2 nights ago, we started watching the new episodes of Queer Eye. And Queer Eye is an amazing show to me. I feel like it's genuine and authentic, and it makes me think and smile, and it makes me happy. And the first episode of this new flight of episodes was about a church in Philadelphia that is an evangelical Lutheran church that has a gay pastor, and a lot of the congregation is gay, and people that are historically not welcomed by the church, or if they are allowed, there's that fine line between allowed and welcomed. And I grew up in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, and I was in the church. I was involved in the church. I played in the band. I went to Sunday school and youth group, and a lot of my friends. I went to a Lutheran grade school for most of grade school. I went to a Lutheran high school and a Lutheran college, and I regret it. There's a ton of value that I got from that, and from the people that I was around, and the people themselves, the people that I was close to. Most of them were very open-minded, loving people. But in so many ways, Christianity has become co-opted by conservatism, and I would say, like, the pro-life debate is something that I understand both sides of. But what I don't get is how a church can preach hate. And that feels like such a bastardization of the scripture. And so at the time, the point where I left the church was after a conversation with my pastor. My younger brother and I were talking to him, and we just asked him straight up, like, would you ever do a gay marriage? And he instantly, without hesitation, said no. And it was that lack of hesitation that I found alarming or annoying, because what became apparent in this episode of Queer Eye, and there was also a documentary that came out on Apple TV Plus called Visible, which was about LGBTQ individuals and their representation in television, both in the news and in narratives and in fiction, whatever, how there's now more LGBTQ characters and people and actors who are involved in shows and who are visible than there were, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30, 40, et cetera, and way on back. And the impact that makes on an individual when you can see someone that you can relate to. And for me, being a cisgendered hetero white guy, there were plenty of people that I could relate to on television, and I didn't have to search for role models or an example of, what is something I could become, because I could become anything that I saw. But there are people who grew up feeling different and who grew up being different than a cisgendered hetero white male. And the fact that on television there weren't any characters to make these people have that connection. The same thing was happening in church, and I regret being a part of that institution, and I regret not making a push to do things right. And the way that I felt I knew was in disagreement with the church, and my solution was to leave. I didn't want to be a part of that organization. And maybe in hindsight, I should have fought for changing the organization for the better, but instead I left. And that concept of any institution, of a church, of broadcast, of a network, anything like that, to pick a person, either intentionally or subconsciously, and either attack or ostracize them, doesn't make sense. It's so mean, and I don't know what you get from that. I don't understand what, as a pastor or as a church or as a network, what do you gain from saying, I don't want that. I don't want that around me. I don't want someone like that being a part of this. I don't want my name associated with people like that. And in the case of the church and in broadcast, it's homosexuality historically, and this is what I'm taking issue with. But the same thing, the exact same thing, is happening right now with the Black Lives Matter movement, where based on a way that someone is, or the way that they look, or where they come from, there's a group of people that says no. They say, no, not you. And I've had it so easy my whole life because there are very few things that I would be excluded from. And it's wildly frustrating to even imagine, and I can't put myself in the shoes of somebody who has felt this firsthand for generations. And homosexuality is one thing, but racism and institutionalized racism, and the church is also victim here, where they did not allow black people in a lot of churches for a long time. And the fact that there had to be a vote to let black people in is ridiculous, that Christianity could be skewed to say that's right. That was the right decision for us at the time. Makes no sense to me. And it makes even less sense to me that still today we could look at our governmental systems and our public services, our police and our judicial system, and say, yeah, we can see the stats that black people are treated differently and unfairly. We can see that that's provable by investigations and hearings and all these different metrics, but we don't want to change it. It's fine. It's their fault. They can fix it. If they want to play in this world, they can change themselves to play in this world. And that feeling of being excluded and not having a voice is infuriating for me to even imagine trying to put myself in that perspective. And there is, again, no way that I can even do that. And so I'm left in this place where I don't know how to teach people to love each other. And that sounds cliche. It really does. And it sounds like an oversimplification. But all anyone really wants, I feel like all these issues can be summarized to like, we just don't want to be attacked for no reason. So we're gay. Why shut the door on our faces? Why tell us that we don't deserve what you have? We don't deserve the rights, the access, the title. We can get a civil union, but not a marriage. And I get that we have marriage equality, federally in the country now, but there's still discrimination against so many groups, and there's no reason for it. I don't understand what anyone gains other than control and power, which to wrap that in Judeo-Christian values is a perversion of the scripture, in my opinion. But we need to, as a country, get to a place where everyone can have a voice and where people aren't treated unfairly and where the people in control are compassionate and empathetic and open to new ideas. And where we reach this breaking point is when those people in power refuse to listen. And if you want to make decisions based on any number of values you have, you're entitled to that. That's freedom of speech, that's freedom of religion. But you can't be a leader if you don't listen. And there's leaders of all sorts of police unions and the country and every station in between. And I've been reaching out to my elected officials and pushing, and hopefully more of us do this, because it's so frustrating to have to make this argument. And the argument is so implicit to what it is to being American, to what it is to that pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness, that to have to stop and say, but not just for me and us, but for them and for them and for them and for all of us. And I think that's why this movement is so infuriating, because it's like a flat earther argument where everyone understands, and it's provable that if you look around, it's not the way you think it is. It is this way. And when you have someone who says, okay, sure, but no. And it's the same thing with climate change and the denial there. It's these people who are ignoring all this stuff for a gut instinct, and behind a lot of it is money, is greed, and that's the only reason I can think of to not at least consider reforming some things and being open to that discussion and finding a path forward, whether it's the perfect path or a good path or any path. The fact that we have to stop and say, you need to listen, because the only reason to not listen and to not make progress is greed. It's because you want to keep your station, your money, the potential for people who look and act like you to move your personal agendas forward. That's the only reason to oppose any of this stuff. And that's why, to me, it's so infuriating. And that's why you see people who are making speeches and points, and you see these beautiful signs at protests, and they're beautiful because they're clever, because they're simple, because they're true. You have people begging to be treated equally. You have people, all they're asking for is to stop being killed. And the fact that we have to petition, and the fact that there's resistance to that change, to say, no, things are fine. We don't need to change anything. And then people dig in their heels. It's infuriating and exhausting. And again, this is my perspective as somebody who has all the privilege, who has all the access and all the rights that anyone in the world could want. I've got it good. And the fact that these people, that the people in power are forcing other people to beg for that and to petition and chant and march and campaign for equality is insane to me. And wherever you stand on these individual issues or how we move forward to address police brutality and systemic racism, there has to be action. And that looks different for a lot of people. Maybe you're somebody who likes going out on a protest. Maybe you're somebody with the money and time to donate your time or money to these organizations that are on the front lines and that are campaigning for the right changes. There's no wrong way to take action forward if your heart's in the right place, as long as it's nonviolent. And there's everyone's going to do something a little wrong. And that's something that has paralyzed me for a long time. I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want to post anything on YouTube because I know there's going to be voices on all sides of things. Is that you shouldn't have said that. You shouldn't have said that. That's not the right way. That's not how everyone over here thinks. That's not how all the people in the church think. That's not how all politicians think. That's not how all black people think. That's not how... There's going to be resistance from everywhere. And I would rather do something less than perfect as long as I'm still doing something. And so I'm finding ways that I can get involved and that I can support this progress, because the the problem here is not that we don't know what the solution looks like or what it should look like in the end. The problem is how long it's going to take, because people are going to say it's going to take a while to make these changes. And it's only going to take a while to make these changes because people are going to drag their feet and they're going to be scared. And it's okay to be scared of these changes. And if we make sweeping reforms to police departments, there are going to be stumbles. There are going to be uncertainties. But that's still better than just saying no. Until you can prove something works, we're not going to mess with the system how it is. And that's not fair. And when the call for defunding the police first came up, I rolled my eyes. I caught myself, and it was a real like ice bucket challenge of privilege, where I was all of a sudden like, oh my God, this is my perspective and my privilege blinding me. And I do my best to educate myself and to participate in equity and inclusion efforts where I can. But even being aware of a lot of my privilege, I lost sight of it here. And when Defund the Police came up, I sort of scoffed, and I'm like, well, you can't defund the police. We need the police. And so I'm into reform and stuff like that, but defunding the police doesn't make sense. And there's two things there. One, part of being against it is not taking the time to really understand it. Same with when the Green New Deal came up, people were just like, no, it's not going to work, without reading what it was and what it wasn't. And defund the police is the same thing, where there's people who are just quick to resist it for no real reason. And because of that, there's not going to be growth. There's not going to be change. And I agree that defund the police is a dramatic expression, and it has caught the eyes and ears of the public, which is good. That was its point. But if you're opposed to it, if you're having this negative reaction, take a second and hear it out. Then you can say no. Listen to what it is, what it isn't, and hear it out. And if you think that it's an awful idea, then you can oppose it, and that's fine. But people who are opposing it before they're taking the time to listen, that's where we have a problem. And the other part of that privilege was in my initial hesitation and resistance to the idea of defunding the police. Part of it is, personally speaking, I have only ever had good interactions with police officers. I have been pulled over and for speeding and let go. I've been pulled over for speeding and respectfully and calmly given a ticket and told to slow down. I've twice made films where we had local police officer to play along in little bits. I've had a happy relationship with every personal interaction that I've had with a police officer. And for that reason, it's easy for me to say there's a lot of good officers out there. There's a lot of good officers, and they've always been nice to me. And so don't defund the police, because there is an inherently good system. That's what my initial reaction was. But the fact that so many people who don't look like I do and live where I do have a fundamentally different perspective of the police, not based in lore or based in fear from the media, from lived experiences, from their friends, from their family, from their parents and their children being beaten, being arrested, being abused, being wrongly convicted. And only now are these communities able to start to prove with video, now that video is becoming ubiquitous, to say, no, that's not what happened. And you don't get the benefit of the doubt. And even still with these videos, officers are still being given the benefit of the doubt. And that privilege, that perspective that I had, that one took another conscious step to say, hey, my experience with police officers and my initial reaction of resisting the idea of defunding them before I even looked into what it was, does not consider the fact that so much of the country, so many of my friends and my colleagues, so many of these people are scared of the police. End of story. And that right there, if I try to put myself in their shoes, it's easy to say, wait, the police don't serve and protect me. They serve and protect people who look and act like Sean. And that is my privilege. That is my privilege at work, of the way that I am treated. And I say this, and the reason I make this video at all, I know I have a limited audience, and best case, this video will probably get maybe 20 views. And of those 20 people, there's a good chance that most of them watch my stuff because they like me, or I guess most of you watch my stuff because you like me, and in some ways you relate to me, and the things that I've talked about before likely resonate with you, and that's why you keep coming back unless you're someone who hate watches me for my hat. But maybe there's a couple people out there who quickly shook off the idea of defunding the police and who look at this stuff and they say, you know, well, the cities are burning. This isn't how you do things. And I encourage you to take a moment and look not at any individual circumstance, any individual situation, but look at the trends, look at the history, look at the stats of what has happened and for how long the system that we've supported has oppressed these people. And take a moment, because if you don't take that moment to breathe, to listen, to truly listen and to learn, and I'm opinionated about a lot of things, but I've always tried, and sometimes it takes more effort than other times, I've always tried to be open to being wrong. And there are a lot of times that I am wrong, and I feel like every good leader, if you look at the people that you respect, most of them are people who are compassionate, who take the time to listen and to learn. And if you look at the great leaders in our history, you can see, regardless of how staged it is, you can see conversations, you can see listening. And right now, our president does not do that. And there is no face-to-face conversation with the healthcare workers who are on the front lines of the virus, and with these community leaders who are demanding change after 400 years of oppression. And if you're someone who thinks that masculine, I'm never wrong, I'm not apologizing for anything, either get in line or get out, if you think that's right, I have to press you on there. What is the merit in being ignorant, in being greedy and selfish and ignorant? That's not respectable. And if you look at the role models throughout our history who have taken the time to listen, to learn, to change their opinion, people who have reversed their stances on things after they've gotten new information, that's what citizenship should be. That's what being a human should be. That's what being a filmmaker is. That's what being any career. If you're a welder and you've always welded something the wrong way, and someone says, actually, if you weld it that way, it's going to break. If you do it this way, it'll be good. And if there's data to support that, what do you gain as a welder by saying, no, that's not how I've done things. That's not how I'm going to do things. You only limit your own growth and potential for relationships and for prosperity and for love. And the same thing is true in video production and politics and everything else. We have to take the time to listen. We have to take the time to learn from one another and take a second to examine, is my perspective skewed because of my personal experience with something? And if I looked different or acted different or lived in a different place, would my experience be fundamentally different? And therefore, would my opinion on this be different? And take the time to process that. And so I'm not making this video, I'm not ending it with like, so go do this, go do that, donate here, check this out, go protest, go march. I'm just asking that you take some time to reflect if you haven't yet. And if you have, take a little more time, because there's more inside all of us. There's more inside this debate and these issues of equality for so many minorities and majorities in a lot of cases, where there's just injustice by the people who have had control historically. And so take some time to reflect and find a path forward that resonates with you and that excites you. And if that's quietly donating anonymously, if that's going out and screaming on the front lines of the protest, if that's supporting the protesters with food or bail funding for when they're arrested, whatever way you find to participate in some way to make sure that everyone's voice is heard and that we can have progress and forward motion in our country so that we're not this laughable, racist establishment of a country that's going to rip itself in half, but we can come together, we can unite on the common themes of love. Imagine a world where no one ever cut you off, where you never had road rage, everyone drove polite, everyone let you in, and you got to go where you were going. I've talked about that before, and that idea of just, if there wasn't, like when you get cut off on your way to work, it pisses you off and you get in a bad mood, and it can sour your day for hours. And if somebody flips you off in traffic and you're like, I didn't do anything. What was that for? It sours your day. And if you can imagine that the system has been cutting you off and flipping you off and not letting you through for 400 years, you can understand how that affects your life, how that affects your ability to show up and love. And if everyone was just that much nicer, and not just our behavior, but our policies and our leadership, if everyone was just that much more patient and compassionate, this country, this world, our local communities could be so happy and so full of love that it would have such an impact on ourselves and our day-to-day and even how our dinners went. And if we didn't have to complain to people about what was going on, not only in the big picture, but in our day-to-day lives, how much more could we accomplish as a society if we approached things with that level of selflessness and patience? And so take some time. Take some time to reflect and find something that resonates with you and a path forward. And whatever you do, don't cut someone off before they've explained to you everything that they're feeling right now, because it can be easy to quickly react or shut something down. And the truth is that you're only hurting yourself and them by resisting that information. Thanks for watching. You watching this video is a sign of love, and the views that I get, the likes you get on Instagram and Facebook, all of that dopamine that we feel, that addiction to the social media, that all comes from this desire to just feel love and acceptance. And I don't want to be a part of any system, any church that doesn't take the time to make sure that we're liking everyone's stuff, that we're making everyone feel loved and accepted. And the idea of leaving a negative comment on somebody's feed just to hurt their feelings, we all understand what that's like. And when our system is doing, when our police system, when our police departments, when our government, when our judicial system is leaving negative comments on people's lives and existence, that's something that's heavier than you may think that it is. So reflect, talk to people who look like you and who don't look like you, and find a path forward. And again, we're all going to make missteps, but we got to make steps. Thanks for watching. See you later. Bye.